PowerPoint presentation. Oh, there we go. There's the recording. We are going to send out a copy of this PowerPoint presentation to everyone who signed up by email afterward. I know there are a bunch of links in here, so I think Mumina is going to drop those links in the chat as we go, but if you miss them, they're all embedded in the presentation itself, which you will get afterward. And we are hoping for questions from you all. Feel free to drop them in the chat as we go. We will also be taking questions at the end too, if you want to raise your hand and come off mic to ask a question. But first, we're going to go through some basics, and then we'll talk more at the end. So we are talking today about FOIA. Let's see. I am Grace. I have been with Illinois Answers now for a little over 2 years, was at USA Today beforehand, and had filed, a few FOIAs at USA Today, but then coming here, I now file at least one a day, sometimes multiple. So Meredith, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, I'm Meredith Newman. I've also been at Illinois Answers for about 2 years. Previously spent most of my career bopping around at different local papers, but happy to be home in Chicago. And yeah, similar to Grace, I used FOIA as part of like my beat reporting, but it wasn't as frequent. And I'm very lucky to be at Illinois Answers where I feel like I've definitely grown the FOIA muscle. So happy to talk more about it today. And also, if you guys have any tips or tricks from your experience, we'd love to hear those too as we move forward. So, yeah.
So we wanted to start by giving you all some examples of just kind of the kinds of stories and projects we've done using FOIA. So if you've
Wait,
been
sorry,
on,
1 second. We want to do a poll real quick.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, Mumina. We'll
That's
go
okay.
back. Yeah, so we're gonna do a quick poll. It should pop up on your screen, and you should be able to answer it inside of Zoom, just kind of asking you all a bit about who you are, your experience with FOIA, if you've used it before. Um, and let's see, your zip code, just so we know your age, a bit about who's in the room with us today. So we'll just leave this up for a few more seconds. So it looks like we've got a bunch of engaged residents, a couple students, a couple activists, a couple organizers. Let's see, at least uh, multiple of you have filed FOIAs before. That's great. Some haven't, no worries. If you have no experience, pretty interesting range of ages here. That's great. A few reporters, freelancers. Hello, welcome. Seems like a few of you have filed requests before and it was completely denied. So we'll talk a bit later about that.
Okay, we're good.
Okay,
Keep moving on.
great. Do we exit out of that, Mumina? We exit out of the poll? Okay.
Oh, it should be, sorry.
Okay, so we're just going to give some quick examples of stories and projects using FOIA. If you've been to one of our trainings or followed our work, you maybe have heard about this one before. We looked into how jails are using a device known as restraint chairs to restrain people, often people who are mentally ill or in crisis for long periods of time. And to do that, we submitted records requests to every single county in the state. There are 102 counties in Illinois and 92 jails. And so this was a project that involved thousands and thousands of FOIA requests. So we had to keep track of them all, deal with various different iterations of redactions, and then put that data all together by hand to build this database of incidents, and then develop some takeaways using that data and talk with people that the records led us to. And so that's just kind of one example. Meredith?
Yeah, so these are some stories that I've written recently that have used FOIA, kind of the inverse of the Restraint Chairs project, where Grace got all of these records to create a database. We were able to FOIA for databases that already existed that were run by state agencies. So on the left is a story that I wrote about defendants who have been found unfit for trial and need to go to a state psychiatric hospital to regain fitness to resume their legal proceedings. And that was something that IDHS had already put together. So that was kind of like the foundation bedrock, so to speak, of that story. And then the story on the right about childcare also was data that IDHS collected regarding a childcare subsidy and people who are using it. But also, my colleague Madison Hopkins and I filed for complaints about people who were qualified for the subsidy, participating in the program, but were encountering issues. And we'll get to that later on, but that was a really helpful way for us to see issues that people were experiencing as a way to get, an idea of how this was affecting people, not just kind of seeing the black and white numbers, but kind of the issues day to day.
Great. These are a couple others. These are transit related stories where my coworker Alex Nitkin and I were able to get a lot of information about how counties were spending some of their money, specifically from the RTA sales tax money that they draw in. Where does that go? And so we were able to FOIA just for some really great spreadsheets showing how that money was being dispensed, as well as some information about just ridership numbers from various dial-a-ride programs. It's kind of often used PACE buses. It's a type of paratransit that allows residents to call in advance, schedule a cheap ride that will take you to destination with, if you're in a certain jurisdiction, really essential for public transit in the collar counties. And so we were able to use FOIA to get more insight into those programs. Art, I see you have a question. We will get to you. We're going to get through a few more slides, but I see your hand. So first of all, just what is FOIA? So the Freedom of Information Act, it is a state law that governs access to public records. And we as journalists, of course, use it a lot. There are activists in the room who probably use it a lot too. But anybody, any citizen, anyone can use FOIA. It is the bedrock of our democracy and having an accountable and transparent government. In Illinois, we have pretty good, strong FOIA law, which is great, pretty quick turnaround times, great fee waivers that we'll talk about for journalists. So that's a bit about just what it is. You maybe have heard like sunshine laws, other names for it. Other states have different types of names, but it's all very similar concept. Who can I FOIA? So all public bodies and agencies. In Illinois, the judiciary, so Illinois courts are not subject to FOIA. We're kind of an interesting exception on that front. So besides for that, there are a lot of bodies you can FOIA. It can be your local government, a state university, your public school, sheriff's department, could be IDHS, DCFS. Meredith and I were just speaking a bit about all the jails that we FOIA'd, all the various health departments, the transit agencies that we were FOIAing for those transit stories. We today will not be talking about federal FOIA, though if there's interest, we can do another presentation on that. That is kind of a whole other ball of wax. So we are specifically talking about state and local bodies today in Illinois.
And just one thing, and we'll talk about tips and tricks later on, but I think something that's been helpful for me to think about is obviously FOIA only applies to public bodies, but you can often find interesting information on organizations or people or entities that are not public government bodies, but interact. So like the local hospital or a nonprofit or, a public person, there's ways to use FOIA and find out information about entities that might not be susceptible to FOIA, but are interacting with those public bodies and spaces.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like if you think creatively about what touch points does maybe this private body have with any public body, like even Illinois courts, I'm kind of working on a story delving into some of that right now. I've been trying to figure out how do I get information on the judiciary when I can't just FOIA for things. So I've had to think creatively about, well, what touch points do the court system have with maybe other FOIA-able bodies, whether it's if they're getting grant funding or if they have specific contracts? How can I FOIA elsewhere that will still give me information on the judiciary, even if it's not being filed to the judiciary necessarily?
So what can I FOIA for? So I think going back to like the idea of like it being a muscle and you have to really work it, I think the more FOIAs that you file, which we'll get to in a second, like the more creative and outside the box you can think. So here's kind of like the basics. But if for those who have had FOIA experience in the past, like definitely drop in your favorite FOIAs to do in the chat. We'd love to see those. And if there's not anything not on the list that you think is kind of essential for us. One thing that you'll hear about a lot, and we'll show it on the next slide, is asking for an agency's record retention schedule. That just means like this is a list of all of the records that an agency is required to have, and it often shows how long they have to keep them for. So that's really helpful. Again, if there's any beat reporters, on the Zoom, like that's kind of helpful for beat reporting in terms of like figuring out potential stories or things that you should ask for regularly. Outside of that, here are some examples. Video, obviously there's been a lot in the news regarding videos and what they're showing with ICE and police cameras and whatnot. Written reports, that was kind of my first big thing that I was asking for a lot. Inspection reports, incident write-ups. For inspection reports, this can be anything from a restaurant inspection report to assisted living or nursing homes. I know like this wasn't my work as a journalist, but as a concerned grandchild, like when my grandparents were looking for assisted livings, I FOIA'd the ones that they were looking at in Illinois to see if there was any previous or systemic issues. I'm happy to say no, but you know, just from the activists or interested or concerned citizens, like that's also a path in terms of inspections about consumer related issues. Audio recordings, 911 calls can be really fascinating to get. Emails are also great ones. City council members, the mayor, you know, politicians. It's great to see. And on a similar note, text messages. I don't have much experience of getting text messages, but if there's anyone that's had a good story, let us know. Also important to know that if someone is doing public work on a private phone, it's still FOIAble. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Grace, but that's something to keep in mind. Data, like we mentioned, internal presentations can be really interesting about what agencies or different groups are talking about, what's the messaging. And then contracts is also kind of a really great foundational aspect. Yeah, Norris writes texts are so tricky to get. Yeah, really tricky and can run up against a lot of denials, which we'll get to in a second. But man, can they be juicy. Something else that's really good that I should do more of is also expense reports, especially kind of from city council elected office about like what people are, you know, expensing. You know, I remember at my last job in Delaware, like people were revealed to have affairs using public, like, you know, the city credit card. So those can be really revealing. Grace, am I missing anything kind of on
No, that's great. And on the expense reports too, that's something that I've like started to try to do more regularly, even just to like see what people are getting. And a great way to start there too is to just FOIA for like, how many credit cards does this agency have?
Oh,
And
that's a good one.
who is listed on them? Just so you even know, you know, the universe of what you could be looking for. And then you can start filing iterations off of that. But yeah, there's a lot of different things that are considered public records in all different forms.
Yeah, totally. Should we stop here for questions, or want to give you the opportunity to ask your question from earlier?
Yeah, I had a comment about some expenses that I was charged with, or they tried to charge me with. But I filed a request with Cook County, and they said the answer to your stuff is like 1,295 pages. We charge $5 a copy plus for the first page and $1 a copy for every additional page. So we want $1,300 plus $2,250 to ship it to you. So send us your check for $1,300 and some change, and we'll send this to you in about a week. So I called him up on the phone and I says, I happen to be aware of the fact that you've already got that in the PDF file. Can you just burn it on a CD for me or a data DVD for me? Yeah, we could do that. And what's it cost for the DVD? $5. I went downtown and picked it up in Chicago, so I was charged $5 for the data CD, but no cost to burn it onto the CD. But I saved $1,300 and some change.
Wow, great
Wow.
stuff, Art. That's amazing.
Well
Okay,
done.
Well
How did
done.
you already know that they had it all together in PDF form?
because I'm the Tea Party leader in Arlington Heights, and I know what happens when people file petitions to run for office. Literally within minutes of when you file a petition, your petition with your cover page and everything is put into a big hopper. They push a button in Springfield. It scans every petition you file plus the cover papers and puts it into a PDF file. So that when people want to challenge petitions, it's in a PDF file. They can easily send it out to people. And those sometimes can be even emailed out there. Some of those files are small enough. Most of them are small enough. They could email them if they wanted to. So I knew it was already, what I wanted was petitions. Okay. And I was getting yelled at by my American Legion post because I would say things at my American Legion meeting like, that Toys for Tots flyer you're advertising, if you give me a computer readable version of that, I can send that to my Tea Party list. Lots of people at the Tea Party will donate to Toys for Tots. And I'm accused of being political by mentioning the Mayor Tea Party in a Legion meeting. And so my American Legion post then is harassing me because I wouldn't sign petitions at their meeting to put one of their members on the ballot.
And Art, I'm gonna hold you there because the question and a lot of questions about just how much this all costs, what is it to get a DVD versus paper copies? We are going to get to that, but thank you for that anecdote and that just advice about, if you know that they've already gathered it.
Make one other comment about getting stuff from the courts. You don't have to do a FOIA if you want court records. You can walk into the courthouse and say, I want to see the divorce file for Smith versus Jones, file number 2318-2-B, and they give it to you. And you can take it over to the copy machine right there. And you can't take it out of the clerk's office, but you can take it over to the copy machine and you got to pay whatever it costs the copy machine to run, but it's usually a dime a page or something like that, not $5 like other places.
Yeah, that's a
Totally.
great point. If
Yeah, well-
if it's a court filing, yeah, you usually can't access it. I think what becomes more difficult if it's in internal data or documents to the judiciary, that's something that is, we cannot FOIA for, so that's where it becomes a little trickier.
Yeah.
But Meredith, do you want to talk about this example?
Yeah,
Record
this
retention?
is actually your example. So if you want to talk about it too, that works. But this is just an example that Grace included about what a record retention schedule looks like. This is the Chicago Police Department. But here's are just some of the things in records that they have, and stuff like this is really helpful and essential because we'll get to it in a second, but when actually filing the request, it's important to be as specific as possible. And so I'm taking an example, but like asking for an ammunition report if that's what you're looking for instead of just a report, things like that. That's kind of a bad example, but you know what I mean. Asking for what specifically they have, if you know they have it, kind of is just sets you up for success.
Yeah, and it also lets you see how long they're supposed to have it. So if they try to tell you, oh yeah, actually we don't have it, and you look and you see, oh, you're supposed to have it for at least 2 years, you should have it. That could, give you a little bit more ammo too in your request. Meredith, I'm actually, if you're okay, gonna let you take the next one, and I'm gonna grab a charger real quick.
Oh, sure.
Be right back.
Sure. So how do I FOIA? So you have to put your request in writing. This can take a form of an email. I've never done a text. I thought, sorry, I misread that. Text submitted through an agency portal. A lot of agencies do have online portals. That can be really helpful, make it really easy. That being said, sometimes the portals can be really finicky. So FYI there. Most local governments have FOIA forms available. And then we also have finding the FOIA officer on the specific agency. That stuff is like pretty available and pretty easy to find. And we'll get to in a second, I often just send emails. It's like the easiest way for me to track them with my FOIA log, which we'll also get to in a second. But I just have like a copy of wording in a Google Doc that I copy and paste every single time. And we have a link to that, I believe, as well. Grace,
Yeah.
anything else there about filing
Yeah,
FOIA?
and if you can't figure out who the FOIA officer is, just call. Sometimes I have to call around quite a bit because I'll go on like a certain agency's website and I just cannot find the portal. I cannot find the email. And sometimes you do just have to call and ask for the email too. And that'll help give you some intel too, because maybe you call and you get to talk to the FOIA officer.
Or the person doesn't work there anymore and they haven't updated their website.
That happens
I've come
quite a
across
bit.
that recently.
Quite a bit, yeah. I get a bounce back. Okay, what should I write in my FOIA? So this is just an example we pulled, and we have a QR code that links to this, but also we link to it at the very end too, just some sample language. I don't always put all of this in every request, but it's a good starting point. You want to describe the records, as Meredith was saying earlier, especially if you know the exact name, what it's called, that can help the officer. You could use language like any and all records related to. For example, I filed something like that related to a specific like police law enforcement incident that happened on a specific date and specific time, or all emails containing the words pothole or potholes within a certain time period. Or for that transit story, Alex and I filed for records sufficient to show like how the counties were spending RTA sales tax funds. So those are just some kind of common iterations. You can also say how you want the records delivered. So Art was mentioning CD versus paper copy. I'll often say, please provide the records in a machine readable format or in a digital spreadsheet. Do not write a question. Don't say, how many snowplows did the city of Chicago put on the streets in the past week? But you could say, records sufficient to show the number of snowplows dispensed. And you don't have to say why you want the records. You don't have to justify your request, though if you are media, you should identify yourself as media because you can then request a fee waiver.
This is like the most essential thing for me, at least, is keeping my FOIAs organized because I'm sure for many of the folks that are on this who have filed FOIAs, like the biggest key is keeping organized because many times the agencies will just blow past these deadlines and you're the one that has to remind them. So we made a FOIA tracker for you all. You can use, I think Lumina will share it in the doc, but you can also use the QR code. Make a copy of it. We did some explainers there. I will note, I would this is just a simple format. Mine is actually much more simplified than this is I think similar to Grace's than mine. I'm always about keep it simple, stupid. So I would say like whatever works for you, alter it that way, add more fields, reduce the fields. But definitely when you start filing FOIAs, just get into the habit of doing it every single time and updating it when you get updates because it will save you so much work and so much aggravation down the road. But also oftentimes if I'm putting in a request and I'm not really sure how to word it, I will often look at how I've worded maybe similar or previous requests, and that's really helpful. I'm trying to think. Grace, any other like uses of the FOIA log other than organization that's been helpful for you?
Yeah, I mean, the way that we've written this one is that like it automatically column D will load 5 business days from when you FOIA'd it. And so that may be different from the day that they actually acknowledge the request or respond to it, but at least that automatically loads the deadline for you so you don't have to do it. And there are different drop downs here that we have as options like filed, extended, in progress, denied. But yeah, I also find this to be really essential. And when Meredith's talking about looking back at past language, we're going to mention this in a bit too, but there are platforms like Muckrock or other websites where you can see what are other people FOIAing for and how are they phrasing their FOIA requests.
Yeah, and we'll get to this more in a second too, but if you are having, I would, and I need to get better about this too, but saving all communications you have with a FOIA officer, like either like saving it as a PDF or screenshotting it or whatever like your preferred system is, but also noting either in your tracker or in your notes, whatever makes sense for you, like when you are following up with these FOIA officers. It's just really helpful if you want to fight a potential denial or redaction down the road, just to have all of your communication together, organized, for you to send maybe to a public access counselor, which we'll get to.
Okay. Is this me, Meredith? Do you want to take this?
Sure. So this is, I won't totally read from all the slides, but the 5 business days is an important one to remember. The agency or the group that you're FOIAing, they can extend it. They have to notify you and give you a reason. Something that is important to remember is on the first point is the failure to respond within 5 days is the same as a denial. And so that's something I'm not as good as about because I've been dealing with a lot of like smaller government, like local government organizations that might not have a sophisticated FOIA operation, but also something to keep in mind. If a public body misses its deadlines, it can't charge you for them. And then this is another key one, if they don't respond within 5 business days, they can't say that your request is unduly burdensome, which has definitely happened to me before. And this is all in the FOIA statute, which I recommend taking a look at, especially if you get some denials that feel weird. But
And what you can always do too is like, on the 5th or the 6th day, you can give them a call too. I've had some kind of like just logistical hangups too. I think it's like St. Clair State's Attorney's Office maybe, where every time I try to get a FOIA from them, like the FOIA officer will fulfill it internally, but then like the next person in the chain of command forgets to send it out. And so I'll call them and they'll be like, oh yeah, it has been fulfilled. We forgot to email it to you. So sometimes a call is just helpful. I have a couple right now that I have been ignored from IDOC. And so I emailed them today to follow up to be like, hey, these, were due yesterday. What's going on? And sometimes it's just a matter of like, oh, I have it right here. I just forgot to forward it to you. So it's not always malicious. Sometimes it is, but just like a follow-up email or a call can often go a long way. So FOIA does, as Art was saying earlier, talking about fees, limits how much a body can charge for producing documents. So the first 50 pages, if you're getting them in black and white, are free. And then after that, they can't charge more than 15 cents per page. If you ask for records in electronic format, similar to how Art did that digital PDF, they ultimately only charged him for the CD. So that's the actual cost of reproducing it, putting it on a zip drive, whatever it might be. And if you are media, you can request a fee waiver. So for example, that massive project we did for restraint chairs, we had thousands and thousands of FOIA requests. I don't think we had to actually pay for any of the records. Maybe it was like 1 or 2 case files from the coroner or something that we had to pay for, but for the large part, we were able to do the bulk of that at no charge. I don't know if you have any other thoughts or tidbits on that, Meredith.
No, I feel very appreciative to work in and report in the state of Illinois because I was previously in Delaware, which has like among the worst FOIA law in the country. Like the response time for if you're a member of the media is like 20 business days. Like it's forever. And the amount of checks that I had to write because they didn't have that in place was crazy. So yeah, Illinois has some pretty good FOIA law on that. And so yeah, I've only had I think a similar, it was a coroner, and it was pretty low, all things considered.
And I think there is an option too where say you just wanted to go and like view the records. I don't think they can charge for that too. So say like you're concerned about, being charged a ton of money to view 200 pages of documents or to receive hundreds of pages of documents. There could be the option of you just going in person to view and not actually paying for them.
And sometimes too, this is also just like getting creative. I guess it depends on the request, right? But if you're like requesting something that's like a time period, if you would just narrow in on a month, if you originally asked for like an entire year, narrowing in on a month to see what would come back, maybe that fee is more accessible or not as bad, or maybe they don't even charge you. And then maybe using those records to figure out a way to narrow your request or realizing like, oh, I actually just want this one thing and I can ask for it separately. So there's ways similar to denials to try to get around it and figure out a straightforward path.
And if they are going to charge you, they should also provide you with an estimate too, like a breakdown of what they're charging you and why. Like I received one today from a local police department, and it showed that, it was like 8 hours of labor, and they ended up not charging anything because we filed a media waiver, but they did at least give me the breakdown of, what it could have been, for example. And when we have paid fees, there's been different platforms. So like we've sent checks in before. Meredith, I think you've used Venmo.
Yeah, that was for it wasn't FOIA technically, but I was sending some Venmo requests or payments to some county clerks. Okay, so what information is exempt from FOIA? None of this is too shocking. Private information, social security numbers. I mean, it's honestly shocking when they don't redact that and you get information that has people's private information on it. Anything that would do an unwarranted invasion of privacy. Sometimes like on a police report, like the victim's name will be redacted or things like that. And then something that happens a lot and can often be abused is if an agency says like, sorry, this is a draft or this is part of our deliberative process, like the idea that they don't want the first draft of something to be released to the public. And I don't know if you have any experience with this, Grace, but we definitely have coworkers where they've thought that. I had that happen to me once where I was asking for this letter that a sheriff had sent to this woman as part of a legal settlement. And the county was like, sorry, that's a draft. That's not available to the public. But they had sent it to her, a member of the public. So I was able to fight that through the PAC, and I got the letter. So
And our coworker Alex too also recently encountered this and sued and was successful. In fighting a document that I think the county had that they were trying to say that was a draft. And for people who haven't FOIA'd before, just because a document has a social security number on it doesn't mean that like you can't get the document. It means that a FOIA officer will then likely redact it. So there'll be a black box or something, and officers redact in different ways. And sometimes there are some ways of doing it are better than others.
Grace, do you want to talk about your black box?
Yeah, so earlier this week I had a funny experience of this where there was a small county that provided me a record, and I noticed that if I opened the record up in preview, they had just taken the little drawing tool and drawn a little box over some kind of private pieces of information. And if I opened it up, I could just click on the box and delete it or drag it and move it elsewhere. And so there are tools for identifying these so-called bad redactions. Muckrock and Document Cloud, which we'll talk about later, has one of those. So you can see, oh, actually, you can through this program see beneath or remove that redaction. So that does happen sometimes.
Yeah, I had one where it was like they sent me an Excel spreadsheet and like names were redacted, but it was like the black fill-in text and it was like under it. So yeah. And then also I've had scenarios where like I asked for like a big batch of emails from different people that I knew were emailing each other, and I, for some really important emails, was able to like Frankenstein the original text of the email because like on one batch, like the first paragraph was redacted, and then on the second separate request I made of similar emails, the second paragraph was redacted. So there's again ways to be creative about it, especially if it's with emails. But definitely check if you see something that's redacted, definitely check it and test it out because sometimes those mistakes happen. So.
So what if my request is denied? So the agency must provide a written explanation for why. And common denials that we were mentioning, unduly burdensome. So that means that the body believes the effort required outweighs the public interest. So that, I don't know if that came up in your issue art where you had hundreds of pages, but we've had examples where what we want would require hours of work to redact hundreds and hundreds of pages, say it's a massive case file or an Illinois State Police investigation. And so, or when we were doing the restraint chairs project, we initially just asked, IDOC for all of these records. And they said, we can't do that because of maybe the way that the records are currently filed, the way that we would have to find them for you. And so we'll talk in a minute, but there are ways to get around that, a way to kind of like maybe cut those in half, narrow things by certain time periods. Other denials could relate to attorney-client privilege, the drafts again, or there might just be no responsive records. So that is something that we hear quite a bit. And sometimes that's helpful because it can confirm for you, okay, the agency does not have anything on this. But also I had one this week where they keep telling me they have no responsive records, but I don't think that's true or really possible because I know they were on the scene of a particular incident. So that became more of an ongoing discussion with the FOIA officer and the public information officer to ask, if they're really thoroughly investigating everything that they have. So don't give up. A denial is just like an initial roadblock or hurdle, but there are ways to jump over it.
Is this me? This is you.
Do you want it?
Yeah, sure. We can do it together.
Okay.
So one thing that Grace kind of mentioned too is you can just try to pivot and kind of narrow it or make it more specific. This might be helpful to, talk to the FOIA officer because sometimes they can be really helpful and you can be like, I'm looking for this. And they're like, okay, you should ask for this. Or if you can, work your sources and they can help you. That was a tip that we got from one of our colleagues. Try similar wording with a different agency. It might just be a product of like a different agency has those records or will give them faster and easier than another. And then one that we've had some success with is submitting a review with the public access counselor, which is under the Attorney General's office. And I was very intimidated by that at first because before coming here, I had never really fought FOIA denials before. And basically what you do is, and we have the contact, I think, on the next slide, but you write to the public access counselor, hi, I requested X. I would like it to be, I don't think that was a proper denial because of Y. Definitely reference the denials that the agency gave you, and if there's anything that you think that should be noted from, FOIA statute, why you think so, and then including your communication that you've had with the FOIA officer in terms of like the first request that you did, any emails back and forth, so forth. One example of one, unfortunately relates to a sad case. There was a gentleman in Peoria who was in a hospital and basically like left the hospital without anyone realizing, went missing for months and months, and then sadly his remains were found. And I believe I asked for, it was pretty basic. I think I asked just for like the police report or any investigative materials relating to the Peoria County officers finding him and whatever. And so they denied me due to privacy information. And unfortunately, but the reality that people who have died don't have privacy rights. And so I spelled that out in the PAC request. The other agencies, of course, able to respond to your request for a review with their reasoning on why they should be denied. It can be a pretty lengthy process in terms of the public access counselor. There aren't any time limits like there are when you file a FOIA request. So that can be tough timing wise, but a number of us have had some wins that resulted in the agency turning over some documents.
And I just wanted to add on that point, we have a link at the end too, but the public access counselor has a ton of information on their website of just like tips and tricks of how to submit to them. So they'll tell you, give examples of what your request for review should look like.
Yeah. Oh, also something that our editor had recommended is looking at previous decisions. So if you can cite that, and also just see what worked and what didn't work. That's helpful too, like Grace mentioned. Filing a lawsuit, obviously that's a very extreme step. We're very lucky to work in a newsroom that supports that. I will say if you can't, I don't want to say the organization, but I think there's some journalism nonprofits or like freedom of the press, First Amendment organizations that might cover any potential legal costs if they think it's worth taking up. So definitely do your research if you think it's really important, but unfortunately it's cost prohibitive. And then the next thing is contact the Better Government Association's policy team. So we're, as part of Illinois Answers, we're published by the Better Government Association, but we have a separate policy team that does a lot regarding FOIA law and First Amendment rights and transparency in all forms of government. So if you are bumping up against something, definitely let those folks know. And their contact information can be found on our website.
Great. And so this is a little bit more about the PAC, as Meredith was mentioning. They are within the Attorney General's office. They ensure compliance not just with FOIA, but also the OMA, the Open Meetings Act. So you can go to them with concerns about that too. This is the email and mailing address.
We have a question from Dr. Alvarez. When I filed a request for review with evidence that the records exist, the AG PAC either ignores the evidence or has it under indefinite review. How do you get the PAC to take action? And do you have a template to file a lawsuit when you do have evidence the public body has the records but not releasing them? Ooh, tough. Go ahead, Grace.
I was just going to say indefinite review. I wonder if I would be curious, is that, an official stance the PAC has taken and has followed up via email? Like for us, our interaction with the PAC usually ends when there is, some sort of decision, whether it's a binding or non-binding opinion, and it can take many months. But indefinite review, I guess I would wonder, how long has that been going on? Have you had phone calls, more specific email communications with the PAC to just get an update on that status? Because it sounds like it's being ignored, maybe, if that's what that means. I don't know, Meredith, if you have thoughts.
Yeah, that's tough. I've had two scenarios. One was like, and Grace, I think you've come up against this too, where like I file a review, the PAC gets involved, acknowledges it, allows the other agency to request, and then if not all cases, but in many cases, they will say like to that agency, okay, give us the unredacted records so we can see if it's something that should be given to me. And I've had an issue where like that agency is just not playing ball with the PAC and is like ignoring them. And so that has stretched out the period of time. And so, yeah, unfortunately, I wish I had like more concrete or specific advice. Again, from limited interactions, I have found that the lawyers at the PAC have been really approachable and pretty communicative when reaching out to them. So I would say if you could give them a call, again, it's really basic, but like giving them a call and see if they can like outline the process. But yeah, I have two things under review at the PAC where I followed up and they're just waiting for a decision. So this could also just be like bureaucratic backup due to.
But we can also follow up with you.
Yeah, totally.
And I know we have Leah Bartlett's name here. But it's not just Leah. There's a ton of people who work in this office, and so typically you're assigned someone in particular. So we gathered some tips and tricks from folks in the newsroom, just some additional tidbits for you to take away. So I think you added this one in, Meredith, about the emails, but when you are requesting emails, remember to include the words and related attachments. So that way, when you get the emails back, anything that was also attached to those emails also comes in. Sources can help you narrow the request, figure out the best wording, can tell you that a document exists, who has it, what form it's in. As we said earlier with the FOIA tracker, you really want to be organized. You need to just hold FOIA officers accountable, stick to your deadlines, keep track of what you filed. Muckrock, Document Cloud, and bad redactions, I was mentioning those earlier. You can sign up, make an account. These allow you to see what kinds of other FOIA requests and language people have been filing, upload some of your own documents, and then run them through that bad redactions tool to see if there's anything hiding under the redactions that you're seeing. read the Illinois State Code to just get a sense of public reporting obligations. That doesn't always mean that the report's being made. For example, I did that recently for one state body, and I was like, oh, they're supposed to report to the General Assembly every year, and I put in a FOIA request for the reports, and they were like, oh, actually, we haven't done them since 2022. So sometimes that happens too, but at least now we know that.
Yeah, our
Um,
colleague Peter did a big story a year ago at this point. I can't remember the timing about DCFS and like was like trying to report on DCFS, just reading kind of what's in state code of like what their, what are their rules and regulations, and saw this like minor thing, not minor, but like a quick thing about like how they have to do these reports anytime a child dies, asked for them, and then really got down the rabbit hole of realizing that they haven't been doing these really important reports. And it blew up to be a really big and important story. So I also find that to be really helpful if like you're embarking on either covering a new public body or agency, or you want to learn more about something. Like there's so many reporting requirements that they have that are really easy FOIAs just to knock off. And
Yeah.
also using that wording in statute to then ask for that report makes your life so much easier.
And don't be afraid to reference other FOIA requests made to the agency. Some individual agencies' websites will actually have a page where they show like what FOIA requests they've received and what requests they have provided. You can say, I am seeking the records that were released in FOIA request number XYZ, if you know the number, and then you can ask for what someone maybe asked for before.
And on the flip side, know that your FOIA request is also
visible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then be nice but firm. Often FOIA officers, especially in parts of the state outside of Cook County, probably have several other roles and are wearing multiple hats. So what is the phrase? You catch more bees with honey or flies with honey?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and FOIA officers, you often, especially if you're FOIAing the same bodies repeatedly, will become a working relationship. So be nice. I think we have a question from Sarah.
Thank you. Hi, I'm a public policy student at UIC. And for some of our projects, we've been going, and one of the one getting pushback is the Chicago Housing Authority. Just seeing like just how I've been using the Wayback Machine. Guys, throwing that out there that you can see snapshots of how the web page was like that. Sometimes the links were broken. Also, when the federal government shutdown was happening, you couldn't access things like the HUD or the SDA because they shut down the sites, or the links, I should say. But my question is in regards to AI. So Illinois, there's going to be this AI law coming into effect January 1st. And I'm just curious, in your circle, have you heard how that can be FOIAble? I guess that's, and I'm just asking.
Those are questions that we've been asking internally, of like, how can we see what local agencies are putting into their AIs, and like how much of it is proprietary versus how much is public. That's something we're actively trying to figure out. But I think that's a great and increasingly relevant question. And maybe we could do a training that is like FOIA and AI.
Yeah.
Like AI that can be used to help you in drafting your FOIA request, because I know a lot of people do that, right? Like asking chat to give you example language, or can you tell me, I'm looking for this type of record. Can you give me names or examples of what this record looks like in this place? But then also what can we FOIA for? And I don't know the answer to that question yet, but I think that's a great idea.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah. And if there's anyone else on here that might have ideas, throw them in the chat. The first thing that comes out to mind, again, that we touched on, but like if they have any policies relating to the use of AI in their office, that could be pretty illuminating. Whether it can be used or it can't. Or in what circumstances, that could be pretty fascinating. That's
We're
super good.
certainly, you know, seeing it already being used to draft various
Like legal briefs.
legal
Yeah.
briefs. Yeah. So we can already tell some agencies are using it to some degrees. But have you seen that at all
This is
related?
me thinking out loud. So I don't know
Mhm.
if this is possible, but in the spirit of brainstorming, I've never done this. If anyone's done this, put it in the chat. Can you like ask for someone's like search history on a government
I think that's
computer?
the question. I think I imagine it would depend on if it's like a proprietary agency version of chat versus they're just
Oh,
using
I see what
chat
you're
on a
saying.
government. But I don't know.
But if it's a government, yeah, I don't know.
Sarah?
So, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so I've worked in risk and cybersecurity in private corporations, and they do keep track. I mean, as part of the information security policy, and they do keep track of search histories and such like that. So it is, and I believe part of an information security policy. I haven't really looked at the public side of things, but I'm saying best practices is that is disabled. They can't disable or delete their searches.
Yeah.
Right.
Using company issue devices.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's
You do.
I was gonna say this isn't totally directing your answering your question, but something it did make me think about just what's going on throughout areas of Illinois is the discussion of data centers. So again, not directly answer your question, but like contracts, proposals to local governments.
Where is that?
Any emails, amongst elected officials using the term data center or whatever, insert any company that you want. That could be fascinating too.
Yeah.
But I think this is a great idea.
with you.
This is a great idea. Maybe
Yeah.
Q1.
Stay tuned.
Maybe our next FOIA training is about FOIA and AI.
Yeah, I would love that.
I look forward to it.
Great.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think now we're in the question portion. So anyone else?
Yeah, and so
any
these are links
experiences?
that you all will be able to, have access to when we send out the PowerPoint. But here's our contact info too. Angel, if you wanna, I know we've corresponded before. If you wanna ping me and Meredith. And if anyone else has questions, feel free to drop in the chat, come off mute. Anything we missed, if you're a frequent FOIA, then you have ideas or tips and tricks that you want to share too.
Someone I answered it about like the website Muckrock. Something else I wanted to drop. This isn't like a FOIA specific, but I really just love it. Is the IRE Investigative Reporter and Editors like Association's newsletter called Local Matters, and it's a great newsletter. I think it comes out every 2 weeks now or so. But it's just like the best local journalism that they compile around the country, and like I would say 9 times out of 10, those are the stories. Those stories involve FOIA, and so I definitely use that as inspiration on FOIAs to request or just how to incorporate it better into my reporting. So definitely recommend that newsletter. It's called, if you just do like Local Matters IRE newsletter, it should pop up pretty easily, but it's a great one.
And I see a question from Nora here that I don't think we've gotten to. If there's time, can you speak on requesting email logs as an option when emails are unduly burdensome? So I did this earlier this week and I requested email logs for 2 days. I specifically, I guess I filed 2. One, I was requesting for a specific email handle, like an individual's email, and one was emailed between 2 particular agencies for 2 days. And so that should give you a breakdown of just all the emails that were sent in log format. So, like date, time, sender, receiver, maybe the subject line. And then you should be able to use that to try to get a sense of who you might be most interested, whether it's the sender or for the subject line or a specific time that you're going for. Based on that initial information, you could then request the full email. That is really helpful, especially if you're trying to find like a needle in a haystack of that an email was sent at some point in a given time period. Keyword search is also really helpful. Any and all emails containing the keyword insert here. If you know what that might be. I know our colleague Peter has done like the Russian doll of email logs of, like use an email log to find an email, to find an email log, to find an email. But that is a great tool as well. And I'm
Yeah, I'm
looking
about to
forward.
throw in some language into the chat because our colleague Madison Hopkins, who is a great reporter, sent me some language that I'm just like going to copy now. I'll pop it in here, but basically she says records sufficient to show electronic copies of emails sent between whosever emails you counts you want. And then she says, please limit the search, whatever the time period is. If there are more than 50 responsive emails, please send me a log of the full correspondence to appropriately narrow the request. And then she says, include that in Excel, make sure people who are CC'd or BCC'd. So I'll pop that into the chat, but I found that to be great language that I plan on using.
And again, as the reminder that Meredith had written in earlier, request the attachments when you request the emails.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we have another poll up. If you guys wouldn't mind taking that, this is helpful for us just to get better with our trainings, and just figure out how we did and how we can improve.
Yeah, and we have, five
Yeah,
minutes left,
please.
and Meredith and I are happy to stay on too. So if anyone else wants to come off mute, drop a question in the chat. Also,
Or any FOIA wins that you're really proud of.
Yeah, that'd be cool to hear.
Stories that we can copy from. That would be great too.
And if not, everyone stay tuned for an upcoming FOIA and AI training. It sounds like there would be.
It's on the books.
I'm interested. I want to
me
know the
too.
answers too. So,
Me
and
too.
I think many people would be interested.
Can you FOIA voicemails?
Oh, I think so. I should think so. Certainly. I've never done it.
I've never done it either.
I'm sure someone in our newsroom has, but if it's a work voicemail account, I should think, why not? I would be curious, can your employer discipline you for FOIAing them? Oh. Well, on the voicemails thought, check Muckrock and see, if you start to search around, kind of what other people, the kind of language people have used for that. I'd be curious.
I think when going back to the childcare subsidy, there was like a helpline that people could call. And I think we tried to FOIA for voicemails there, but I think we were unsuccessful because I don't think voicemails were left, so to speak, right? It was just like talking to someone on the phone.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I'll be curious to look into that. Sarah, I think, has another question.
I do because I have you guys. We're working on a project. We're researching, we're putting information together about an alderman from the 1980s, one of the 5 aldermen that was incarcerated and such. And we're trying to collect all the media and news articles and stories. And there's particular news stories that NBC, Carol Marine was her name. Carol Marine, and I've reached out to NBC5 and WTW. We're trying to find the archives of these videos. And I'm not getting a lot of traction. And I'm just curious, can you use FOIA for that?
I'm trying to think if